we're not trying to say this is the solution to all your problems. And I don't think it'll solve all of my problems, but I think it'll just help a little bit. I think it's going to make things a little better. And I mean, why not try it? Clearly, if whatever you're doing isn't working, maybe you should try something different. Thank you so much, Stephen, for joining us. So, Stephen, we just have a few questions for you about holistic health. So the first question we have is, can you provide an overview of just your background and experience as a holistic health professional?
For me, I started teaching. I had my own martial arts class when I was 17, so I started instructing classes since then, and that's kind of where my passion for coaching started. And then I had a knee injury and I went off teaching dance instead, and then became a personal trainer, which took me around the world. I was on cruise ships and giving presentations about fitness every day, and that just sparked my interest more and more. So when I came back to New Zealand, I did more studies and became a naturopath. But I'd already done a bit of other studies, so I had extra time during my course to do other things. So I studied nutrition separately to naturopathy and herbal medicine also separately. And now recently I've just qualified as well as a health coach.
What is holistic health and what is its importance?
Basically, a holistic approach is where we take into consideration everything, not just the symptoms, like what's going on at home, at school, at work. How long has this been going on for? When did it start? What were all the causing factors happening around that time? What else is going on in your life? And it's like, I often say to my clients, it's like a puzzle. You get all these bits of information and you're piecing it all together. And I've got an hour and a half the first time I meet someone, and that's still not enough, because you can't really, I'm talking about chronic issues, not short term. So when you're talking about holistic health in a long-term setting, you need all this information to fix someone as a whole person, because they're not just one part, or they're not just one problem. There's everything kind of plays together, particularly when we're talking about stress and mental health. We're seeing now that they are causing these long-term issues. So if you're just addressing those issues and you're not addressing that long-term stress or mental health condition, then you're really not going to get far. So I have a special focus with cancer, autoimmune, and mental health. That's really my three areas of passion. Like, I treat everything, but I love those areas because there's so much we can do. That again, you don't get help with if you're just looking at one part of the problem. We can see now in the research that cancer particularly is 90% lifestyle, diet and lifestyle. So the stress factor and the mental health comes under the lifestyle aspect. The biggest destroyer of the gut lining is stress. That's above any medication or food or alcohol or drug.
How do you address emotional and mental well-being as a part of your holistic approach?
Right. Well, remember, it's not one size fits all. And that's what I love about what I do. I can't just say this is the answer for everything, because it's so unique to everyone as an individual. If I was to sum it up in general, like if we're going to be talking about food, we've all experienced this, right? When you're sad, when you're down, you're depressed, you go for the comfort foods, the things that make you feel good. Yeah. Yep. And obviously that makes you feel good right now in that moment. But sometimes you're even crying while you're eating that ice cream because you know the other side effects of it, right? Yeah. Yes. When we're talking about particularly sugars, high sugar foods, they might give us this initial hit of feeling good because they do have a certain response in the brain similar to like a dopamine reaction. And there's some research indicating that sugar is more addictive than morphine. I struggle to believe that's true, but it's there in the research that it's really addictive because it makes us feel good, but it's extremely short term, and the long-term effects are massive. Like 1 teaspoon of sugar lowers your immunity by 50% for 4 hours. It's a huge hit to the immune system. The biggest thing, if we're talking about mental health, right, we want to keep our blood sugars very, very balanced. You've probably seen like a blood sugar graph, and we want to keep within these kind of lines. But when we have a blood sugar spike, we go above that line, and that releases more insulin. And then we can have this crash. And when we crash, we secrete cortisol, which is a stress hormone. But basically, those two hormones are fat storage hormones. So we're storing more fat when we're having more sugar. And this really affects this peak in depression of this blood sugar, it just ruins the brain chemistry, really. It's going haywire up there. So we want to keep stable with those blood sugars. So in other words, having a more healthier diet is one of the most important things to keep your brain chemistry balanced. Also the gut right, because we know now that 90% of the serotonin is made in the gut, and which is our happy hormone, and 60% of our dopamine, which is our calming hormone, and they get made by the good bugs in our gut. So we're not feeding those good bugs the fuel that they need, which is basically whole food diet. They get out of balance, and then we're interfering with our serotonin and our dopamine. So sometimes when we're getting depressed, it's not about going like you've got a serotonin withdrawal or deficiency. So we'll give you this selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which are our most common antidepressants. Instead of doing that, well, we can do that while at the same time fix the gut. So we don't have to rely on those drugs long term. Our symptoms of high cortisol is pretty much weight gain around the middle when we get that, what they call the spare tire. It's a stress hormone, it's survival mode, so your body's storing all this fat, and it typically puts it around the midsection. So to reduce this cortisol, I quite like the work of Mindy Powers. Have you heard of Dr. Mindy Powers? It's Fast Like a Girl is her book out.
No, I haven't.
Right? I think you two will love her. So what I love about her is that you look at the research, particularly when we're talking about fasting, and it's all done by men, written for men, and it's like one size fits all, but that doesn't work for women, right? So she brings into her research how she talks about the natural cycle of a woman's cycle, so the rise of the estrogen, the fall, and the progesterone at the end of the cycle. And in her book, she talks about the hierarchies of hormones. So you might have your sex hormones, which are like your progesterone, your estrogen, your testosterone down the bottom. And then above them, you've got insulin, because that's actually involved with the other hormones as well. Above that, you've got cortisol. But higher than that, you've got oxytocin. So that's like the master hormone, the CEO of all the other hormones that tells them what to do. So rather than thinking stress management, how do I take away cortisol? It's better to kind of think at the step above that. What can we do to put into our life that helps manage that cortisol, which is the oxytocin, which if we read a lot of magazines and articles, often they just talk about sex and cuddles, but it's more than that, right? Oxytocin is like a walk on the beach or a book you enjoy or just anything that gives you kind of nourishment on like that soul level. That's releasing oxytocin, and that hormone regulates the cortisol.
What do you see as the potential benefits of holistic health compared to more conventional medical practices?
Definitely long-term healing, reversal of conditions rather than symptom management. And, it can cost quite a lot when we're looking at holistic health, not the diet and lifestyle stuff, and that's what I focus on primarily. But often we need some kind of supplement support, and since they're not subsidised by the government, that costs a lot of money. But if the funding was invested in that, preventative medicine and health, rather than reactive health, we'd actually save a lot more money in the long term, which would save a lot on our economy for the country. And so not only would we have more money, but we'd have better health and vitality as a country. Have
you heard of any misconceptions about your medical practice?
Yeah, not so much anymore, because it is changing and shifting. It's been a dramatic change in even the last 10, 15 years. Like when I first started practicing naturopathy itself 15 years ago, it was laughed at a lot by the GPs, and we were considered quacks, and they thought we were going to tell someone to chant around a fire backwards naked or something, and I got a lot of doctors laughing at me, but now I'm getting some referring them to me, which is great to see.
What advice do you give to clients for maintaining a balanced and stress-free lifestyle in their everyday lives?
I do quite like the 80-20 rule. So if you're doing things right 80% of the time, we should be allowed that 20% and enjoy it and not feel guilty about it. There's nothing wrong with having chocolate, particularly if it's dark chocolate, if we want to be really good. But, if as long as we're not overindulging, we allow it, and then we get nourishment out of that too, right? If it is chocolate, isn't it, at the example again, you can really get some really good feelings about that. It really hits, and that's nice. We should be allowed that. It's not like we're not allowed that. But are we balancing that out with the rest of our diet being good? But particularly in New Zealand, I see we're not moving much anymore. If we could get out and do a bit more movement, balance that out so the body can actually burn off what you're eating.
What are some signs that a client may benefit from holistic stress and anxiety management, and how can we recognise when it's time to seek your help?
I find it's quite easy. I mean, this is because I work with this a lot. So I can see it straight away if someone is holding something back. So, and it's typical in New Zealand as well. We say, hi, how are you? They're like, oh, yes, I'm fine, thanks. How are you? They're not really answering the question, and you're not really interested when you're asking. So when you start to notice that someone is just a little bit more quiet or reserved, you can just check in again with them. No, I'm interested. How are you? What's going on? You just seem a little bit quiet. That can be it. Then they go, oh, okay, they're actually interested in me, or wondering that was a caring question. Okay, well, this is actually how it's going on. And once you open that up, it just carries on from there. Genuine interest. If you notice something going on, that is massive, I think, for healing. We're not being heard enough, I think.
I kind of came into this as a skeptic. I didn't know what he was going to say. I was expecting the whole witch doctor, oogie boogie, Scooby-Doo sort of stuff. But it's definitely not. And I think it's cool that he mentioned as well that nurses and doctors work alongside holistic health people when it gets to a point where doctors can't necessarily help a person in a way that is best for them. And especially cancer as well. That was another thing he mentioned that I thought was...
That shocked me.
My grandmother passed away 2 years ago. She was diagnosed with a rare liver cancer that was terminal, and she was given 2 months to live, but she passed away after a month. And she... kind of hard.
Oh, Bronte.
And I just think, in regards to watching her go down a hill, she did really fast once her brain knew that she was really sick and that she was dying. Her whole body reacted to that, and about after a week after finding out she was bedridden, she couldn't talk or anything, and I believe a big part of that was the mindset and knowing that she was dying and that she had such a short amount of time and shock and trauma, and just she wasn't like she was young. She was 73, I think. She was very young, and I just think it would have been interesting to see, in regards to going to somebody, a holistic professional, how that would have changed and benefited her. And which is something that is pushing me towards myself going to see the likes of Stephen to learn more about this, because cancer runs in my family, breast cancer, everything. Thank you so much for obviously giving us this opportunity and to learn more about holistic health and natural health as well. So could you explain to us what Reiki is?
So Reiki is a form of hands-on energy healing. The way that I was taught, there are different systems, I believe, but the way I was taught and what really resonates for me and I like about it is that the person that is giving Reiki, that's had the attunement to have the Reiki energy flow through and give the Reiki, is not really doing anything in and of themselves. They're just being a sort of conduit for that energy to move through. And it's just about universal spiritual healing energy, entering into the body and going into areas where it needs to go.
How does it help individuals in regard to stress and anxiety?
It's I find it, and the clients that I work with, their kind of feedback on it, just feels deeply relaxing and restorative. It just tends to kind of really calm the nervous system, shut down the mind, bring awareness into the body and just soften energies in the body. When I was in my late 20s, my dad was going through cancer treatment, and I saw the mainstream system, just how difficult that was for him and how much pain he was in over a long period of time. And I didn't really know what I could do, but I felt drawn to just putting hands on him, just doing some like massage on his feet. And every time I would do it, he would just relax and fall asleep, and he really appreciated it. So it just felt like, oh, there's something here that I really feels right. It feels like the right path for me to follow.
Do you have any advice for individuals who are struggling with things like stress and anxiety?
I will speak from my own experience with dealing with a lot of that in my younger years, and just working with many people who struggle with exactly those issues. It seems like it's just pervasive at the moment in our culture. As much as possible to bring some yin time. So from a Chinese medicine perspective, the yin time is kind of the rest and restoration time. And it's something that I think culturally is really lacking. We tend to be just on the go, busy all the time. Anxiety is a really uncomfortable energy, so it's very hard to just be with. But the more that we resist it, the more it tends to just increase and kind of get locked in. So as much as possible to just give space to allowing whatever feelings and emotions are present in the body to be felt. Always want to caution people against feeling like something. I feel like these therapies can really help support, but I feel like also we make the changes ourselves by how we respond to what's going on internally. So I feel any treatment or therapy its role is to support that healing process, not to do it.
You kind of did half a Reiki session with Tracey. Obviously you didn't have time for a full one, and we kind of talked to her about that. How did you feel afterwards? I remember when you got up, you looked real groggy.
I feel very light and calm. And like when I came in, my head kind of felt like, it's weird, but like a storm kind of in it. And now I can hear my own thoughts. It's nice. When I walked in, I was very skeptical. And when I was lying on that bed, I was thinking, this is bullshit. Like, she's just touching my head. What is this doing? But then, surprisingly, I did feel a difference. When she was doing it, my whole body felt blocked. It felt heavy. It felt like so much tension. And when she touched the different areas of my body, it felt like that tension was pushing down. And then when she got to my feet, it just felt like it had all been released from my body. It was honestly a really amazing feeling, because also walking in there, I felt like I couldn't just think about one thing. I felt like my whole body, my brain was just stressed. I mentioned in there when I got up about that my brain just felt like it was a massive storm, and then once she did that, it felt so clear, like that storm had passed, and I could actually hear my own voice in my head, and I kind of wanted to sleep.
It was a very relaxing room.
Yeah.
The room was very, very calming. I felt very calm. I was just standing there behind the camera, but I still felt very calm, and I was just watching.
The whole environment, I think she added to it as well. She was very kind and calm in herself, which I feel like made me feel a lot better about that whole process. But yeah, I did enjoy it, and I do recommend it, but obviously it's completely up to one's own individual. If you feel like you want to do that, then go ahead. If you don't, you don't have to.
Because I was very skeptical of the whole holistic health and every little part about it, because obviously my brain was, the way I kind of was raised was that science and you should follow things by the book and that all this, but in reality stress is such a big factor for everything, and it's an invisible thing. Like, you can look at someone and be like, oh, you look a little stressed, but you can't really physically see stress.
Yeah.
I'm not skeptical anymore. That's one thing. I do believe that this works, but I also believe that you kind of have to be open to it, because I feel like if you're blocked off to it, it's not going to work. And like Stevie was saying, not everything's going to work for the same person. Like, Reiki might work for you, but then maybe I'll go and I'll just be like, that wasn't for me. We're not trying to say this is the solution to all your problems, and I don't think it'll solve all of my problems, but I think it'll just help a little bit. I think it's going to make things a little better. And I mean, why not try it? Clearly, if whatever you're doing isn't working, maybe you should try something different.